I've been a full-time freelance graphic designer for over 5 years now, and over those past few years, I've learned a few methods that have greatly improved my creativity and success as a designer. So in this video, I want to share 5 of these ideas with you and some of the thinking behind them. Let's get into it. The first thing is to lock in. And I know that phrase has been way too overused on social media the past year or so, but the thinking behind it is really spot on. For me, locking in consists of a few things: deep work, blocking out distractions, and minimizing the use of my phone. The idea of deep work was something I discovered a few years ago through the book Deep Work by Cal Newport, and it's an idea that I put into my design practice and have been doing ever since. Basically, deep work is this idea of focusing on a complicated or important task for a good period of time without any distractions. And I've found over the last 5 years or so, with this deep work style, I can get about 4 to 5 hours of true, honest, good design work done per day. And that's if I don't let myself procrastinate or get distracted. I like practicing this idea of deep work because I get the same amount of stuff done I would in a full 8-hour office workday in about 4 hours or so, because you don't have all those distractions of meetings, emails, and just the kind of stuff that doesn't really have to do with work, but distracts you throughout a workday when you're an employee. For me, these deep work sessions are usually reserved for larger design projects, editing a video, or creating some kind of short form content. So how do we set ourselves up for success so we can actually accomplish this deep work? For me, one of the major things is to block out distractions. For example, when I need to get serious work like this done, I need to even block out in real life distractions. So I make sure to tell my partner Erica to not interrupt me for that given amount of time. And obviously if there's emergencies and stuff, that's a different story. But even getting interrupted during your work for something super small can have a detrimental effect on that creative flow state and really getting back into that focus. In that deep work book, they show some scientific studies that it takes about 15 minutes for your brain to fully focus on some kind of difficult task. So every time you get interrupted, that timer in your mind essentially resets, and it takes 15 more minutes of your time to get back into that flow state. And that's not even counting however long the interruption or distraction or task that you got interrupted to do is. In the end, you end up usually working less amount of time in total if you can just focus for those shorter bursts of time. And I get distracted all the time and procrastinate. And there's times where my brain feels all over the place and I can't lock in like that. Don't feel bad if you ever get into those modes. I would say if you prefer this level of working, just try your best to get at least a couple days of deep work done per week. The next thing is canceling out digital distractions. So I make sure to close all unnecessary tabs that are open on my computer, and specifically email. It's so easy for me to get sucked into some random email conversation. And even if I check it and don't respond right away, that residue on my brain of thinking what I might respond later is only going to distract me from whatever creative task I'm actually trying to do. Can be hard working as a designer or some kind of creative that uses digital tools like this, because you're always in that box of light, in that computer that you need to get the work done, but it's the same thing that can distract you. And another thing that can really distract you is, this mini box of light, the phone. The method that I've used to most help me not get distracted by my phone is quite simple. Put your phone on Do Not Disturb and put it far enough away from you, whether that be in the corner of a room, in another room, wherever, where it's out of any convenient arm length's reach. Just that little bit level of friction and barrier to you picking up your phone will make you use it a lot more less. We all know how easy it is to pick up your phone to check the time, respond to a text, or something simple like that. And all of a sudden, you're 10, 15 minutes in scrolling Reels or TikTok, and that time just seems to disappear into thin air. So I think it's really important to minimize phone use if you really want to get that meaningful type of work done. All right, the second thing that really boosts my creativity as a graphic designer is music. I know most of us probably listen to music, and this isn't some groundbreaking idea, but I do think the benefits of music outside of just entertainment or pleasure aren't talked about enough. Not only do I love hearing dope music, I'm a big fan of hip hop, hardcore, punk, jazz, all kinds of stuff, and I love discovering new music and just love it in general as a hobby. but I truly do think it does help me focus and get more meaningful creative work done, especially when I'm wearing headphones. I think having good quality over-ear headphones is probably one of the best indirect investments you can make into benefiting your career as a graphic designer. I personally really like these Biodynamic DT770s, super comfortable, great quality, and you can wear them for a long amount of time. They block out noise at just the right amount too. Aside from just the obvious thing of the focus of the headphones and kind of blocking out the outside world, just random things like when I'm on Spotify, I'll discover a super cool album art that will pop up on my Discover Weekly, and maybe that'll inspire me on a project I'm working on, or I can use it as a reference later down the road. These days, I listen to music in a handful of ways. The first one is with records, which is probably the most kind of pure and genuine version of listening to music and an entire album and enjoying it all the way through. The second is a similar setup, but with cassettes instead. Third would be with Spotify through my different playlists I make, Discover Weekly, just discovering new music, whatever it is. And lastly is YouTube, a bunch of mixes that I've saved, and SoundCloud, similarly, some mixes that help me lock in for an extended period of time. There are definitely a few specific types and genres of music that help me lock in the most and really squeeze the most out of my brain to get all the creativity out of it. So I thought I'd share some recommendations with you all. So starting with records, let me give you my top 3 real quick. This isn't top 3 all time or nothing. This is just kind of what I've been listening to lately. First up, we got Operation Ivy. Really good early punk album. Kind of some ska stuff too. The precursor to Rancid. Parquet Courts, Wide Awake. Beautiful album art as well, and designed by I'm pretty sure the lead singer is a painter, and he does all this really cool stuff. Kind of some post-punk, like new wave, alternative rock type stuff. Really, really good. Madlib, Shades of Blue. Amazing collaboration between Blue Note Records and the GOAT, in my opinion, of hip-hop producing, Madlib, where he goes in and just chops up a bunch of crazy beats and stuff. So for cassettes, I've been bumping this Fury, Paramount, some OG kind of Orange County hardcore. Another hardcore album, Only One Mode, Speed. Got this recently at one of their shows. Really like this album. And then kind of to link up with Madlib again, we have Mad Villainy, Madlib, and MF Doom. Now on Spotify, I actually made a playlist recently called Lock In. It's a kind of multi-genre, just collection of various songs I like that I think help me focus. So I'll link that in the description below if you want to check it out. But other than that, I've been listening to 3 albums: Quarantine Sessions by Tom Misch, Jar of Flies by Alice in Chains, and Body and Will by Kumo99. And then lastly, my ultimate go-to for when I want to fully lock in for at least an hour and a half is going to be this mix on SoundCloud by Perseus that my homie Trevor showed me to a while back when we were in college, and I've just loved it ever since. I always go back to it, and I know I can rely on it. Another 2 mixes I like are on YouTube: Critical Mass and this, obviously a title SEO type name, but Sunday Afternoon Relaxed Jazzy Deep House Mix. But don't be dissuaded by the title. It's a good mix. So check that stuff out if you want some dope music to bump while you're working, and I'd love to hear what you're listening to, so drop some recommendations in the comments. I honestly thought everyone did this with their schedule or calendar, but I've learned that's not the case. Just to me, it feels very intuitive. But I've learned over the past few years there's a ton of different ways to work. This is just what works for me. Time blocking is simple, kind of what it sounds like. You set up the different tasks and things you have to do throughout your day with different chunks of time and how long you think that it'll take. And to really set yourself up in the best way possible using this time blocking method is by integrating the idea of Parkinson's Law, which is, the backbone of this whole time blocking system, where Parkinson's Law states that a task will fill the time that you allot for it. So the better you get at judging the amount of time something can take, and you can do stuff faster, shorter, longer, you can better gauge your day and feel a lot more organized. This may feel rigid to some people, and as creatives, I know a lot of people like to work at night, work at different times, don't like to have a set schedule. If that works for you, run with it. Don't change what you're doing because I recommend this. But if you're having trouble focusing, or you want a way to set up your day that'll really help you, that has helped me, this is huge. And it's quite the opposite, actually. The rigid schedule and the more kind of analytical and logical workflow of setting up your day and being kind of systematic with it actually makes me feel more creative in the work itself. Because when all that stuff is kind of out of sight, out of mind, and you have yourself set up for the day, you can truly focus and put all your creative energy into the work and the ideas itself. What I just thought of while talking about this isn't like get the most amount of work done. This actually allows it so I have a lot more free time, because I know when that chunk of work is done, I'm done for the day. I can separate myself from the work and just, my free time. Because as a freelancer, you can really end up just working all the time. So you really got to set up some guardrails for yourself so you don't burn out and you get your stuff done, but in a healthy and productive way. Well, another thing I really like in my schedule is not a lot of context switching. Context switching, for example, would be working on a poster design, editing a video, and then writing a newsletter. Those are very different types of my brain and how those creative workflows work. So on days where I do design, I like to do design. On days I write, I like to write. On days I do video, recording, editing, I like to do that stuff. And kind of keep it grouped that way so my brain can stay in that mode. So the fourth thing is front load the work. This can mean many different things depending on if you're working on your own personal project, working with a client, working with a boss. But as a graphic designer, for me, it means really diving heavily into the early phases of the planning, concepting, researching, so you have the goals and are aligned with the client or with yourself throughout the rest of the project. And it's more clear what you should be doing in the production and the final phases. I think a lot of miscommunications with a client or boss or even yourself on any given project come by not having the clear concept and stuff locked in from the beginning. Even something as silly as a 5-minute call can save you hours of work because the client will mention something that will help you really clarify the direction you want to go down. I learned the hard way in the past by not communicating well during the beginning of a project. And when you're not aligned and you deliver the final project, you did a lot of work still, but they may not end up liking it. I think that's when a lot of the whole client designer resentment and drama starts to seep in. So these days, I try my best to dive super heavy into the early parts of the project, present a few options of directions we can go down with a client, so they can select the final one and we're on the same page from the jump. And it also kind of gives you a paper trail to refer back to when they start to steer away from whatever it was, because there's a difference between a revision and tweaking a small thing and no, we want to go with an entirely different concept. It's always good to have the receipts, Basically, just do a lot more of the work in the beginning in that early phase so it makes the production and final parts of the project a lot more streamlined. And in total, you probably end up actually working less and more efficiently. So the fifth and final idea is to be flexible, or more specifically, be stubborn about your goals, but flexible about your methods. You cannot control the things that happen through the course of a project as a creative or just in your life. It's important to have a North Star and have the goals that you really want to get to, but I've learned that you can't be so rigid with how you think you're going to get there. Life has all kinds of paths for you and new things will open. Things that you always wanted won't happen. And things that you thought you would never do or thought would never be helpful to your main mission end up being some of the most rewarding things possible. So it's good to have that determination and that stubbornness to get to the places you want to be and achieve the things you want. But just be very open to the pathway of how you might get there. I would have never thought my design career, would go down this path of becoming also more of a creator, mixing in content, education, personal artwork, design. Early on, my goal was to work at a really cool boutique design studio. And I've worked close to that. I've worked with those types of places as a freelancer. And if I was so stubborn about that was my only idea of success, from the get-go all the way to now, I'd essentially be a failure. But I don't feel that way because I feel proud of a lot of the success I've gotten through doing this content stuff, through doing freelance, for doing personal artwork and concept stuff and just having fun being a creative and being a graphic designer. After learning to be kind of more flexible and open to all the possibilities that are out there, it really lifts a big weight off your shoulders and makes you feel a lot more free. The being flexible part too doesn't just apply to this big concept, big idea type thing of life. It also applies to the design work. If you have a goal to get to a certain type of design, don't think how you're going to do it is going to go exactly how you want. Sometimes if you open yourself up to those happy little accidents and just the serendipity of the creative process, you come up with some ideas that you never would have thought of. Sometimes I come up with the coolest shit because I made a mistake trying to do something I thought I wanted to do. As long as you achieve the goals of creating something dope or whatever the value is you're trying to add with that finished thing, it does not matter how you got there. It could have been an accident. It could have been planned all the way through. It could have been the 50th try. It could have been the first try. Whatever it ends up being, just enjoy the process and be happy with whatever you ended up coming out with. Thank you so much for watching. I'd love to hear the strategies you use to set yourself up for success as a creative, so drop them in the comments below. That's it for now, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.